ça va être Sylvia Martin-Laforge, actuellement directrice générale du Québec Community Groups Network, QCGN, un organisme à but non lucratif rassemblant des organismes communautaires de langue anglaise, dont l'action est centrée sur les objectifs stratégiques ayant une incidence sur le développement et la vitalité du Québec d'expression anglaise. Sylvia Martin-Laforge possède une vaste expérience de la politique et des programmes sur les langues officielles concernant les communautés minoritaires, ainsi que des problématiques vécues par les Autochtones et les femmes. Elle a été nommée à la commission du Conseil supérieur de la langue française par le gouvernement du Québec entre 2008 et 2013.
Hello, bonjour. Alain et moi, on a discuté de comment on allait approcher notre séance à deux. Et puis, c'était important pour vous de voir le projet de loi de la FCFA parce que, comme Alain l'a dit, on a beaucoup travaillé avec la FCFA sur ce projet. Il y a des petits bouts sur lesquels on n'est pas sûr d'être tout à fait d'accord, mais c'est vraiment dans l'esprit et l'ensemble du projet, on est vraiment, there's no air between us, actually. And I think the government has heard that very carefully. So there's a reason. He came first, I'm second. I'm older, you've noticed. For over 3 decades, I've had the privilege of working towards the fulfillment of the Official Languages Act. The purpose of supporting the development of English and French linguistic minority communities and generally advance equality of status and the use of French and English languages in Canadian society. My work within official languages has been undertaken at the federal, provincial, and now community level. And I think that from that perspective, I have a pretty good experience of what it feels like, having worked in many different jobs at the province, but in French language education as director of policy, where my job was not around curriculum, but my job was to ensure that federal money would come in, and so we would be working towards an aménagement linguistique. I remember when that was started in my team, aménagement linguistique for the schools. So, I learned a lot there, and although I was a Quebecer, and Guy Matt always says, you weren't a Franco-Ontarian and you worked in French language education. How did you do that? I was undercover. But then I left the province and I went to work for the federal government. I'd been there before, but that's another long story. And I went to work for PCO when they were building the Official Languages Act, 2002, a long time ago. So I worked on and saw the first official languages, first action plan, where of $751 million, there were certainly many policy and funding gaps for the English-speaking community. So I think I can speak with assurance and authority, if I may. In front of this august group, I have to find some authority and assurance because you know all there is to know about official languages. I'll tell you my story and the community story, actually. The Canada's official language playing field is not level for the English-speaking community. Look at the national leadership within official languages. Francophones dominate both parliamentary committees, the Official Languages Branch at Canadian Heritage, sorry about that, guys, the Office of the Commissioner of Official Languages, and the functional areas within federal institutions responsible for implementing the Official Languages Act. Official languages has been, is, code for French Francophone affairs. And as a result, the bulk of Canada's official languages strategies has been directed towards the Francophones. Peripherally, this makes sense. After all, from the pan-Canadian perspective of our nation's two languages, French is in the minority. And the foundation of our current understanding of official languages, the Royal Commission on Bilingualism and Biculturalism, was struck to make room for French Canadians within the federal space. You can see this reflected in the way the current Act is structured. Proceedings of Parliament, administration of justice, service to the public, language of work, for example. Je viens d'une famille où on parlait les deux langues au Québec. J'avais une mère francophone, un père. Il n'y avait pas de type pour ça dans le temps, mais ça serait maintenant un allophone, un italien. J'ai appris les deux langues. Je suis allée en anglais à l'école, à l'université. J'ai appris les deux langues. Je suis, je pense, foncièrement biculturelle. Ça dépend de mes passages à être mariée à un francophone ou deux. Aller à l'école en anglais, à l'université, avoir des amis. Alors, I've lived it. I've lived it in Quebec, and then I went to Ontario. And I tried to live in French in Ontario, and c'est pas facile. So I think I really understand. It's popularly inconceivable to think that English-speaking Canadian would have trouble receiving service from a federal point of service in English, or have trouble using English at work, or be hindered from employment opportunities within the federal civil service. And is there really an English minority in Quebec? Aren't they just an English narrow strip of land connected to Ontario through the West Island? And after all, this minority has its own schools, health and social services institutions, 3 universities, a network of colleges, this best treated minority in the world. What do they have to complain about when, in the words of one recent commentator in Le Devoir, Francophone children are being forced to go to schools in BC that don't have running water? I'm not here to make the case that English-speaking Quebecers are a minority. We are. And I think that all of you would agree with me in this room. Not talking out there, but in this room. No matter how inconvenient that is. In the words of former Senator Joan Fraser, we are an inconvenient minority. André Pratt also said, you know, what, you're never on the right side of things. You're either, majority Anglo from the rest of Canada, you're a minority. We're never quite the right ice cream flavor. In fact, for there to be a Francophone minority, I would posit we need to exist. Let me quote from the general introduction of Book 1 of the Dunton-Laurando report. The principle of equality implies respect for the idea of minority status, both in the country as a whole and in each of its regions. Within the provinces or smaller administrative identities, both Anglophones and Francophones live in some cases as a majority, in some cases as a minority. Since the English-speaking population is larger across the country, its members are often less than the minority, but they are the minority in some areas, especially in the province of Quebec. That was a long time ago, Laurando Dunton. In either case, the principle of equality requires that the majority, in either case, the principle of equality requires that the minority receive generous treatment. We are in a linguistic minority that exists within a province that requires the words emergency room to be taped over. We are a linguistic minority within a province that has centralized management and control over our health and service institutions, which, by the way, are not English, bilingual, but points of service that offer services in both languages. You go to the Jewish General, you go to the Montreal General, you go to the MUHC, bilingual. We have lost, or we struggle to keep what Alain spoke of, le pari pour. We have been so interested in integrating, not assimilating, but integrating into our majority that we believe we have integrated, but the majority tries to make us invisible. And I think as minority communities, that's part of the framework for the vitality of official language minority communities. You must not be invisible. Yes, we have 3 universities, founded and paid for by members of our community in the days when Montreal was the academic center of Canada and attendance at Catholic post-secondary institutions was restricted. You must know that the way we are today, as you're all historians in big pieces or little pieces, that the history of the English-speaking community of Quebec has, in fact, influenced everything that we live right now. Did you know that 25% of Bishop's University's population are English-speaking Quebecers? Bishop's, it's a wonderful place. 25% are Francophone, 25% are Francophone Quebecers, and 50% come from outside of the province. That's our bastion of English-speaking Quebec. Did you know that only 1% of Quebec's, or less than, or around, 1% of Quebec's civil servants are English-speaking Quebecers? How can you change policy when you're not there at the table? We have Friends and Official Languages Act that help us change policy in the federal government because we have friends. We have friends in the bureaucracy. There's an Official Languages Act, but that's how policy gets changed. It's not easily by a bunch of community activists on the outside trying to bang the door and get policies changed. It has to be both sides. There has to be people inside willing to listen. Did you know that although Quebec's judiciary is fairly bilingual, that people still have problems accessing services in English in Quebec? And did you know that English-speaking Quebecers are the only official language minority in Canada whose median income is below that of the majority? Or that we have significantly higher unemployment rates? English-speaking Quebecers are more likely to live in poverty than the majority. Look at the results of the public service employee service through the regional lens that English-speaking Quebecers are experiencing the same challenges as their Francophone colleagues in the rest of Canada in using their official language in the workplace. That's the Borby-Mendelsohn report. I'll give you an example. There are 21 federal institutions in Quebec outside the NCR whose workforce does not reflect the presence of an English-speaking minority. In 2015, Correctional Services Canada employed 3,713 people in Quebec, only 110 of whom 2.9%, were English-speaking Quebecers. But you know, there's a lot of English, too bad, but there are a lot of English inmates coming to us in federal prisons, and the impact, if we care about the inmates, the impact on them is they can't get out of jail because there's no halfway services in English for them, and there's no training materials for them. There is an impact in Quebec about services to numbers of employees and services out of the federal government. There are over 1 million English-speaking Canadians who completely understand the challenges of living as a linguistic minority. We get it. It's not only the interest of Francophone Canadians for official languages to be code for Francophone affairs. The Dunton-Laurendeau report understood this. In order to make a space for French federally, both languages had to be protected from sea to sea to sea. And Canadians had to see this happening. The contemporary narrative about Canadian Federation was, in the words of Lester Pearson, an equal partnership between the two founding races. We were in this together as equals, or it all came apart. These ideas, no doubt, offend our modern ear, but they are important to note since it is clear that the architecture around official languages was not designed to favor one language over another. The French majority in Quebec cares about official languages within the confines of the promotion and protection of French and French linguistic minority communities. For the Act, as discussed by Alain a few minutes ago, to reach its full potential, English Canadians must equally personalize the Act by linking it to something relatable, like the experiences of English-speaking Quebecers. If the Act remains too closely associated with one official language, we are afraid that its long-term viability in a multicultural, polyglot country is in question. Thank you.
Pour la FCFA, et peut-être aussi vous pourriez compléter là, la réponse d'Alain. Donc, quand on regarde le projet de loi sur les langues officielles que vous proposez, il y a la partie 7 là, qui fait l'objet de beaucoup de discussions ici là, depuis hier, mais c'est vraiment là. Donc, il y a des éléments ici qui permettent de préciser des choses. Il y a un plan de mise en œuvre. Vous parlez donc de faire un plan sur les langues officielles, un plan quinquennal qui s'appuie sur des consultations. Vous énumérez des secteurs aussi déjà. Je me demande si c'est une question que je me pose. Si c'est une bonne idée là, de déjà mettre des secteurs ici parce qu'il y a toujours le risque qu'on en oublie. J'aurais mis par exemple la recherche. On aurait pu mettre la recherche par exemple. Mais je me demande si c'est le bon endroit pour mettre ça. Puis je me dis, bon, l'idée de le faire en consultation, c'est bien, mais est-ce qu'on aurait pu aller plus loin? Puis de parler de co-développement d'un plan d'action sur les langues officielles. Donc, il me semble que c'est un pas de plus vers un petit peu plus de prise en charge pour les communautés aussi. Là, c'est sûr qu'après ça, il faudrait voir comment est-ce que ça va se concrétiser ou ça pourrait se concrétiser. Et puis là, on pourrait après ça discuter des secteurs là, quand on parle ça vient le temps de faire le co-développement là, du plan d'action.
Donc, quand on parle du plan d'action, nous, dans le projet de loi, on met notamment, donc on mentionne les secteurs, puis l'idée de mentionner les secteurs, c'est pour s'assurer que ces secteurs-là, qui sont essentiels à notre développement, fassent partie d'un plan. Et c'est toujours ça l'hésitation, je pense, du côté des communautés, de dire, bien, on laisse tout ça à un règlement. On définira ça après. C'est qu'à un moment donné, si on ne le met pas dans la loi, bien ça peut changer avec n'importe quel gouvernement qui arrive en place puis qui voudrait tasser les langues officielles. Co-développement du plan d'action, c'est justement la raison pour laquelle on parle notamment de créer un comité consultatif pour que ce soit au début, pas juste qu'il y ait des consultations au début, mais qu'on fasse des consultations publiques et qu'on chemine avec le gouvernement jusqu'au développement de programmes, la mise en œuvre des programmes, l'évaluation des programmes aussi. Alors, c'est un mécanisme de plus que les communautés auraient si on crée ce comité ou cette entité-là, qui serait vraiment un peu un think tank des communautés avec le gouvernement pour cette approche de co-création.
Oh, use this one. So, Part 7 for the English-speaking community is, as for everyone, a very, very complex issue. In our community, we have not had the same analysis or the same work done around policy issues that could affect us. Number one, I mean, I wasn't kidding when I said, 50 years. We didn't think we were a minority community then. I don't know about me, but we, the big we. And so we didn't give it a lot of thought until relatively recently. So our areas of concern have not been developed in terms of research and in terms of articulating what would a Part 7 would look like, a Part 7 lens would look like. And on top of that, the feds have devolved. How much to Quebec? In what context are we going to work in the Official Languages Act and devolution, and how will that work? If anybody from IRCC is here, you know that I've been working for 12 years from the first time that somebody from IRCC said to the English-speaking community, we don't do Part 7 in Quebec. Really? Really? They have maintained that for 12 years since I've been there. We don't do, I still have the email. We don't do Part 7 in Quebec. And so we've tried to get them to do Part 7 in Quebec through research. Not easy. I don't know if anybody here is IRCC. We still appreciate each other and we have good conversations, and we're still trying to figure out what does Part 7 look like in Quebec. So why am I saying this? I'm saying this because this co-development or consultation, we need the overarching program of official languages, the legislative framework, and we need symmetry in the Official Languages Act. Somehow, where the tension is or where the balance is, to have involvement, implication, implementation of Part 7 in Quebec has to be really worked through. Sure, we can work it through with the SAFA, but they are light years ahead of us in capacity around, for example, immigration. So that's why we have to work together so very carefully, because we need an overarching Official Languages Act. We do. But the complexities and the challenges of working within actually a hostile environment in Quebec to the English-speaking community is, an everyday reality. So I love the idea of Part 7, love working with, in co-development around that would mean, but let's not kid ourselves, it's not going to be easy.
Il nous reste quelques minutes. Y a-t-il une... OK, Yvan.
Bonjour et merci à vous deux. Il y a une demande ou il y a une proposition dans le projet de loi de la FCFA qui, pour moi, vient pourrait être un changement fondamental dans la façon dont on pense le régime linguistique fédéral et la loi sur les langues officielles. Et bizarrement, Alain, dans ta présentation, tu n'en parles pas du tout. Et dans tout ce que la FCFA a fait ressortir depuis le dépôt du projet de loi, vous n'en parlez pas. Et je ne serais pas surpris qu'une grande partie des gens ici ne le savent pas non plus. Vous demandez que les dispositions de la loi sur les langues officielles en matière de langue de service, de communication avec le public et de langue de travail s'appliquent à l'ensemble du secteur privé de juridiction fédérale. Donc, on parle ici de l'ensemble des compagnies de transport, pas seulement Air Canada. On parle ici des banques, des institutions financières. On parle des ouvrages interprovinciaux. Vous excluez ce qui est télécommunication pour des raisons culturelles, j'imagine. 2 questions. C'est quoi la logique, quelle est la pensée derrière ça? Et si on va dans ce sens-là, c'est la première fois que le fédéral, autrement que par l'étiquetage, se mettrait à réglementer l'utilisation des langues dans le secteur privé. On n'a jamais fait ça. Et c'est un changement qui est fondamental à mon avis, et c'est un changement qui exigerait, par exemple, de repenser le rôle du commissariat à langues officielles. On voit les problèmes qu'on a imposé la loi présentement sur pratiquement la seule exception, Air Canada. Donc, c'est quoi le raisonnement derrière ça? Et je crois savoir que le QCGN is in on that. Et l'autre question que j'ai pour vous, c'est pourquoi vous n'en parlez jamais?
Grosse question, ça. Effectivement, je pense que pour nous, c'était des temps. Si on parle de promotion des langues officielles puis d'avancement du statut des langues, il faut prendre un pas de plus. Et le secteur privé, les institutions fédérales, le secteur privé géré par des lois fédérales, offrent largement déjà des services bilingues. Alors, ce serait de protéger, ce qui est un fait dans plusieurs compagnies à juridiction fédérale. Alors, pour nous, oui, effectivement, c'est une nouveauté, mais je pense qu'il faut aller là. Il faut que les langues officielles soient plus juste une langue scolaire ou une langue lorsqu'on va chercher un service du gouvernement fédéral. Et quand on parle aux jeunes, le rapport sur les jeunes que le Sénat a fait, c'est justement ce qu'ils disent. Ces enfants-là qui ont été à l'école de langue française, ils disent « Moi, il faut que ce soit dans ma vie de tous les jours où je vis mon français et je veux pouvoir aller chercher mon café ou je veux pouvoir… » Puis là, évidemment, ça ne s'appliquera pas à… C'est ça, là, je fais des nuances quand même. Là, ça ne s'appliquera pas à l'ensemble des entreprises, mais il faut commencer en quelque part. Et pour nous, ce ne serait pas un gros changement parce qu'ils offrent déjà des services. Les banques offrent déjà des services dans les 2 langues. Et donc, oui. Pourquoi on n'en parle pas? Bonne question. On ne l'a pas mis dans la présentation, mais je pense qu'on devrait pouvoir avoir ce débat-là. Mais ça, c'est un débat qui est difficile aussi au niveau public, puis au niveau de la majorité. Faut bien y penser puis bien l'expliquer.
So, you know that le Bloc québécois, the NDP, have asked that in Quebec, that Bill 101, Law 101, applies to all federal institutions in Quebec. That's asymmetry at the top of that's unacceptable. If any federal government agreed to that and didn't agree to that Canada-wide, that would mean that in Quebec, you have just territorialized a whole area of Canada. So we have, it's hard to talk about for sure, because not everybody is following what, I can't remember the head of the Bloc Québécois' name, a lovely man that came and talked in my office about he was going to put forward a bill for that. I can't remember his name. No, before that. Way before that. I mean, like 7, 8, 9 years ago. Before that. This has been going on for ages. And then Tom Mulcair thought this was a good idea. And a woman that ran in a little gossip here, a woman that ran in Westmount and Legacy Dowson we had a big conversation about, really? Anne, a friend of mine or a colleague, really? You want to do this? What do you think that will do here in Quebec? We have enough problems getting jobs in Quebec, us Anglophones, because we don't speak French well enough, because it gives a wrong signal. So anyway, it's hard to talk about, yes, but every political party to, excuse the word here, pander to the government of Quebec will consider this a good thing. The Official Languages Act must not, if it's going to do it in one province, it's got to do it across Canada. And it's good for everybody. So we just have to convince people it's good for everybody. I'm going to leave it that to Alain. He's younger than I am. It'll take longer.
Et sur ce point, je vais remercier les deux présentateurs beaucoup et à la prochaine.